Alex,
Hey there.
well, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. It's so nice to finally just speak to you again.
Yeah, it's great seeing you.
How are you? How's Vegas?
Vegas is good. It's hot. Where
Y-
or where are you these days? Are you back home or are you still in
No,
San
I
Diego?
wish I was still in California, but I'm back home, Mexico City. Yeah.
No, we were at camp. And then from camp, where did I go? I can't remember. I went a couple different places. But it's been a whirlwind of travel because I go someplace for a day or two and then I'm flying back. It's
Yeah.
been crazy.
No worries. I love it, Alex. I'm so happy to make this episode uh something true. Very grateful for it. Um and I'm going to make it quick so we have good time for good questions. So, I'm going to start with a question that I asked back in Vegas during lunch, but I'm sure a lot of people are interested, which is why were you originally ever interested in treating or working with humans? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I would say that but really the interest in working um, with people to help them
Yeah.
really kind of achieve their peak performance and do what they love doing for longer. I think most of it was I was inspired by my father-in-law. When I was first married, he got ill,
Mm-hmm.
and the care that he was given wasn't phenomenal care. It wasn't great. He ended up
Mm-hmm.
passing away. But that really caught me thinking about the future of healthcare and what we can
Yeah.
provide and what we can do and how we do it. Um, and then through the course of certain events, it kind of just led me into working in sports full time. And not just sports, but even like weekend warriors, like helping people again do what they love doing for longer. So whether it's whatever the activity
Mm-hmm.
is, you know the idea of encouraging people to stay active, um, you know, encourage movement, and that coupled with the idea of, getting the right amount of sleep and the proper hydration and, getting your
Yeah.
diet right. Like all of those things were, obviously complementary with being able to help people sustain their peak performance.
Mm-hmm. How old were you at the time when you got started?
Oh my goodness. I've been doing this now for 35 years. So I won't tell you what my age is now because I'm old,
Am I?
but you
I
can
think
figure
I
it
think
out.
you're I think you're cutting off. I don't know if it's my end or yours.
Oh, I don't
Can you hear
know.
me
Can you
well?
hear me? Yeah, I can hear you perfect. Can you hear me well? I have my earplugs in. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but you cut off. Let me see if it's my end.
Because I can hear you perfect.
No. Let me see. Let's give this a try. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So sorry to interrupt. How old are you when you got started?
Well, I've been doing this for 35 years, so I'm old. So you can figure out how old I was I started, but I was probably in my, late 20s, early 30s, late 20s,
Yeah.
mid 20s, mid to late 20s when I got started.
Yeah. It's been 35 years is
So not too much older than
really
you. You're
impressive.
what?
That's
What are you, 18, 19? What are
I'm
you?
I'm 18, but
So there
that
you go.
yeah, 18, but that's real skin in the game. Um, what's that process been like? What's kind of I mean, I feel like this question's hard, but what's been the biggest takeaway of this journey so far?
Um, the biggest takeaway really is, I think the things that we were able to accomplish over the years. Like, when I first started, when I started,
Mhm.
there was no internet, right? There was no cell phones. It was,
Yeah.
it was in a period of time where
Yeah.
you kind of just had to go kind of network, grassroots, old school. and go
Yeah.
meet people and try to explain what you were doing, and hopefully, you could get them to
Yeah.
come in. And it was, and what I learned through that process was, I think, the importance, and the value of proper communication. I think,
Mm.
Tom and I've always talked about, the three C's, clear, current, communication. And I think over the years, as people have more access to information, whether it's through social media or online, the internet, and they can search anything at a moment's notice. Not all the
Yeah.
information there is accurate or correct, or it's kind of the Wild West out there. So really what I learned, back then, starting when I started, was the value of just clear and current communication, like helping people really understand
Yeah.
why they were experiencing what they were experiencing at the time they were experiencing it. And then how can they
Hmm.
overcome that and make sure that they don't experience that same thing again.
Hmm.
And so that's really what I valued. And I've been able to kind of apply that in, now just about every aspect of my life, not just in,
Yeah.
treating, elite athletes or weekend warriors, or people who want to do what they love doing for longer. But I think in, all of my relationships, I think it's just important to always have just clear and current communication.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And that was very well said. Um, so I'd love to know kind of the idea of what's behind, or the center of the idea that you use to treat and work with different athletes, like Tom, or just anyone you see, and how can we use these principles?
Yeah, I think, certainly, my education in traditional Chinese medicine really set the path for me. Um, because it taught me that, the body is a whole, right? Like, you can't separate, the mind, from the physical, emotional, spiritual. Like, it's all connected. And
Yeah.
so I learned early on, when I first started, I would just work on athletes that were injured or people that had pain, right? And I would work on them,
Hmm.
and I would help them get out of pain and get back to doing what they did. And then they'd get hurt again, and they'd come back, and I was kind of like,
Yeah.
wash, rinse, repeat type of thing. And then it dawned on me, like, wow, like the principles of Chinese medicine, like I should really start to incorporate, like, how are they thinking about, the injury, the mechanism of injury, or their pain cycles, or, how is it
Hmm.
impacting them, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. And as I started to balance those three things out, I started to realize, wow, like, we can make adaptive changes really, really fast.
Yeah.
And, once
Wow.
I started to incorporate, the brain into, you know into the treatments and into the training,
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
getting setting, new neural pathways of movement, or new neural pathways of behavior, new neural pathways of belief systems. So for example, I would do a treatment, and then I would tell my client, like, we're going to use this first treatment as your baseline, and you should get twice the amount of relief from each treatment. So interestingly, what that does for them is, during the time of the first treatment and their second treatment, they're thinking about, okay, where's my pain cycle? And, oh, by the time I go to my second treatment, I should get twice the amount of relief. So I would tell them, like, if your pain goes from an 8 to a 6, let me know how long it was a 6 for. So if it was a 6, if it went from an 8 to a 6 and it was there for, 2 hours or 4 hours, we'll use that as your baseline. So the next time I treat you, we should get 4 to 8 hours of relief, right? Then if we double that, we should get 16 hours of relief. And so as I started to kind of pre-frame, my clients with that, I learned that that's really what was happening. And so over the course of like 3 or 4 treatments, they were no longer in pain, and they were back to doing what they loved doing, because they just understood early on from the first visit that your brain doesn't really know time. It doesn't know right or wrong or
Yeah.
good or bad. It just knows what you teach it, right? So as long as we
Yeah.
start to enforce proper, you know, good thought processes. So, for example, I would also tell my clients, when someone asks you, how are you feeling? Just say, today's the best day it's the best it's felt, right? Because today probably felt better than
Hmm.
it did yesterday. So, right, you're not really lying. It's just it's the action of the words that you're using, which are basically positive words, rather than them trying to look and find the pain and go, okay, oh, there it is, I feel it.
Sure. Yeah,
So
you're creating a new reality through your words.
yes, and so that was that then became part of, my treatment protocols. So whenever I started
Mhm,
treating athletes for, for pain or injury rehabilitation, I would, use those, principles. So I really connected, the physical, emotional, you know, spiritual
mhm,
components of the body into the treatment plan.
mhm.
And, wow, once I really started to do that, I really started to see really great results,
Really?
and how my clients started to respond. And then, I could translate that. And once they were out of pain, I go, okay, now let me go watch you work out or see what you're doing so we can make sure we
Mm,
never repeat these patterns again. And then,
mhm.
we would see, I would see some, a few little biomechanical changes or things that we could, go, hey, instead of doing it that way, maybe you should do it this way, right? Because
Yeah.
everything was just learned behavior. And what I learned too through that is that athletes just got good at doing it bad. And once you
Wow.
corrected some of the bad principles, right, you could rewire and create new neural pathways of
Mhm,
proper movement. Well, then they never got hurt like that again.
mhm. So I'd like to tie another question to this, which is working with Brady and creating TB12. Um, how was your approach with him originally? Did you already have that mindset to work with athletes?
Yeah. So when we first met, I had already kind of evolved to the point where I knew I needed to, kind of just focus on the body as a whole
Mhm.
and not just a component of rehabilitation or treating.
Yeah.
Like that's when we met. It was, you know, helping him through some issues he was having with, pain wise, but it was incorporating then how he was thinking about those things.
Mhm.
And then we started talking about how he was training and the things that he was doing and what we could eliminate to from his training, to not have these cycles repeat.
Yeah.
Um, and so when I first started to work with him, I was able to incorporate, again, this whole, mental, emotional, physical component of it.
Mhm.
And he began to not only feel the difference, but understand, how this could really help him through the course of, of his career.
Being Brady's coach, what have you learned through that process? Not only um, him receiving the help from you, but vice versa. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How have
Um,
you
I,
grown from that?
I mean, a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a remarkable human being,
Mhm.
first of all. So, I learned so many life lessons from him. I
Wow.
mean, it would take a whole nother, massive podcast to talk
Yeah.
about, all the wonderful things I learned from spending time,
Mhm.
with him. But really, the ability to maintain a level of humility, and graciousness at the same time being able to balance out, some grit and some grind.
Wow.
And, so there's in life, life is life, right? Like not everything, goes your way
Yeah.
every day, but to be able to take on a challenge with some humility and some grace,
Mhm.
as well as being able to attack it head on, like, I learned that, right? Because I think oftentimes most people think about, trials or things they're going through, and they can either think about them from a negative perspective or a positive perspective. And I
Yeah.
think that, there's a balance between those two things.
Mhm. I love
And
that.
and so spending a lot of time with him, I really learned how to
Mhm.
create a balance between attacking a problem, but attacking it with some humility and some
Mhm.
gratitude.
Yeah, I love that. There's one big takeaway that I got from meeting you and from a bunch of stories that my dad's told me about you, which is and this is something that you share publicly as well, which is the message or the idea behind staying teachable, right? This is how luck finds you. How what does that mean for you?
Um, well, I always tell people, look, your body will give you what you give it. And I think life, is a lot the same way. I
Mhm.
really do believe that, that the universe will give you kind of what you give it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've always lived by this. I repeat it to myself all the time when I find myself getting out of balance,
Mm,
like, where your concentration goes, your energy flows, and that's what
mhm,
grows.
mhm.
And so, if I want positive outcomes, I really need to focus on, positive perspectives
Of
through a
course.
negative situation. Like, it's
Mhm,
not going to change the fact that, life is throwing things at you. Life is life. And, not everything is perfect.
mhm,
But I think, the perspective you take into any given situation is in your control.
mhm.
And,
Mm,
if you've got one of two ways to
I love
deal
that.
with it, like, the problem's not going away. You have to deal with it anyways. You can either deal with it from a negative perspective or a positive
Yeah,
perspective. And
yeah.
I just choose to deal with it from a positive perspective because I think that as I put that out there, the universe will help me,
Mhm.
come to the solution that I need much quicker.
Yeah, I love that, Alex. Something else that caught me off guard when I met you in Vegas was I did not know you're 59 years old. Um,
You're not supposed to share.
no, when my dad joked about it a couple of times, I was like, I could not believe it. You feel and you look so much younger. Um, what I don't want to like. What's been the biggest needle mover? Not necessarily for your health, but like yeah, like your physical, mental, and spiritual health. At your
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it really becomes the balance of those things. I think if
yeah,
if you spend any one time too much time in any one area and it becomes out of balance, you're going to have some issues, right?
mm,
So I try to keep things in balance well enough, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, um, and put out enough energy evenly in those certain areas,
mm,
right? So, like my diet, like I eat healthy.
yeah,
Doesn't mean that I don't have some fun days and I don't, have foods that people think like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe you're eating that.
yeah,
Like I love chocolate and now I'll eat good chocolate.
mhm,
I'm not going to eat crummy chocolate, but I love chocolate. So anything chocolate, I enjoy.
mhm,
Um, and then, from a physical, perspective of adding, just again, getting good sleep, getting good,
yeah,
hydration, getting exercise. I make sure I move and I exercise and I get, for my age, I'm doing, I do a lot of resistant
yeah,
based, workouts and a lot of load bearing workouts,
mhm,
to try to maintain my strength and then, to support my bones because I'm getting older. So, I keep those things in balance. And then, my faith is a big component for me, right? Like I'm always making sure that, I'm grounded and connected to, to God and a lot of the choices that I make throughout the course of my day, I think about my relationship with God and,
wow,
what that would mean. If I make this choice, how does that impact my relationship with God? If I make this
mhm,
choice, how does it impact my relationship with God? So, those things are very meaningful to me,
mhm,
because I think ultimately, if I've got a good relationship with God, then it helps with my relationships with my wife and then my
wow,
children and my friends and my work, my colleagues. And, I
mhm,
think it's just a trickle down. So again, I know it's a long-winded answer to your question, but I think it's really
beautiful,
creating, a balance. And and then I just don't believe in, I think that age is a number. And
mhm,
as long as I take care of myself and do the things that work for me,
mhm,
um, I think the results speak for themselves. So, again,
yeah,
and it's, and you can create self-analysis, right? You can, at the end
yeah,
of your day, you can sit there and go, okay, like Alex, what went right today? What did you do great? What did you not do so great at? What can
mhm,
you do better at tomorrow? How can
mhm,
tomorrow be better than today? And so, as I self-reflect at the end of my day, um, a lot of those things, that's how I think I can motivate myself to continuously improve and do better. And,
mm,
um, it's learning from relationships and keeping good people in your life. Like your
yeah,
dad's extremely meaningful to me in my life.
mhm,
We could not talk to each other for a long time. And then when we finally speak, it's as if we never were apart, you
mhm,
know? And,
yeah,
your dad's influence on me from, people call it peer pressure or whatever, but I just call it peer influence. Like your dad and just thinking about, our experiences and the things that, we were able to enjoy together and things like that. Like that's very meaningful and impactful to me even today, years
mhm,
later. So,
mhm.
it's just, again, people that you associate with, and I never really want to let those people down. So,
Mm,
I try to keep my life in harmony
mhm,
with principles and things that will also not let them down.
mm. That's beautiful, and again, very well said, Alex. Um, for kids my age who have this desire to go against the grain, um, create, be really themselves. Um, what advice would you give them? And I guess to make the question easier, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Yeah. I would say be authentic.
Hmm.
Um, be true to yourself. I think oftentimes when I was younger, my younger version of self, I was always trying to, make sure I did things that were pleasing to other people. Like I was a big people pleaser.
Wow.
And not that that's so much of a negative, but sometimes I did it at the expense of my peace or my
Mm,
happiness or my joy.
yeah.
And what I learned over the years and what I would probably tell my 18-year-old self now is like, as long as you have, you're kind and you have some humility, um, you know, you, you know, saying no isn't a negative,
Hmm.
right? Like you can, if it doesn't work for you, you can tell people that that doesn't work for you in a very kind and gracious way,
Yeah.
so that they're not offended or upset, and then it doesn't impact you negatively. You're going, oh, like, why did I do that? I really didn't want to do that, but then I committed, so now I
Yeah.
gotta do it. Like, so I would say, being authentic, is, I think, important. That's advice I would give you to you know be true to yourself.
Hmm.
I think find out what your core values are, um, and then don't be closed off to new thoughts and new ideas. And
Hmm.
like, if you're open to ideas, and you'll find what resonates with you,
Yeah.
right? Like, you'll see people going, okay, like, I appreciate what they're saying. Doesn't quite resonate with me in my life, but I'm grateful for the message.
Yeah.
Then there's other things you'd be like, wow, that's really cool. I'm gonna apply that. Like,
Hmm.
so just being open and authentic, I think, is
Hmm.
is what I would encourage younger people to do.
Yeah. Wow. I appreciate that message as well a lot. Um, what is doing the work you do? Um, you know, building TB12, being a coach, being a father, uh, treating athletes. What has that work taught you about the world?
Hmm. It's taught me that there is a lot of determination and drive,
Wow.
um, and grit out there. I
Hmm.
think when we see the way that things currently are in its current state,
Yeah.
there's so much information coming at people. And again, it's all learned behavior. So I always try to encourage people to be cautious about how much information they take in from any
Of
one
course.
place.
Yeah.
Because again, your brain doesn't know good or bad or right or wrong. It just knows what you teach it.
Yeah.
So, the more of one type of information you get in is kind of the information you're going to be getting out.
Hmm.
So, again, I think it's important to be open-minded,
Hmm.
but again, feel what resonates with you,
Hmm.
and apply those things that way.
I love that. Alex, for my last question, a very powerful one, a question that I love. What brings you most joy in life?
I would say time with my family,
Hmm.
obviously.
Yeah.
I've been married now for 36 years, um, and we've got amazing children and amazing
Hmm.
grandchildren. And so, the time that I get to spend with them is obviously extremely meaningful to me.
Hmm.
Over the years, I've learned how to feel the joy of those experiences a lot more. Like when I was younger, I took some of those things for granted, and didn't quite, um, find the joy in those
Yeah.
things.
Hmm.
But over the course of the years, what I've really learned, that there's really only two things that are valuable in life.
Hmm.
And, one is relationships,
Hmm.
and the other is memories.
Mm.
Because the things in life for the most part, always work out the way they're supposed to work out.
Okay.
And you get stressed out about things, and you realize, like, once it works out, like, why did I stress out so much about that thing?
Yeah.
And I think that type of stress takes away the joy of life.
Wow.
And so, we have one of these here on this earth, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so to me, I'm like, why am I going to, not focus on, good memories with friends and family and people I really care about and want to be with? Like, that's where my focus and attention is now.
Yeah.
Again, and then making sure that, I maintain my life in a way that I can be of value and I can contribute to my relationships with
Mm-hmm.
the people I care about.
I love that. That was beautiful, Alex. I appreciate your time so much, your wisdom, and I won't let a part two happen if it's not in person. I'll be
Listen,
there soon.
perfect. I love
Yeah.
it.
I
Can't wait to
appreciate
see
you
you
so
again.
much, Alex. Thank you again.
All right, you bet.
That was beautiful.
Well, big hugs.
Same
Have an
thing.
amazing day, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
You too. Yeah, absolutely.